But so I'm Hannah. I'm going to be hosting the panel of speakers we've got for you today. So we've got Kieran Keane, who's at WorkSafe, and he's currently the recovery and performance officer there. We've also got Rachel Powell, who works at Collingwood Football Club. She's an account manager kind of in the partnership space there. And then we've also got Bennett, who's the co-founder of Rostify, and also worked for Event Workforce Group. So Rostify is, I guess, what a lot of our volunteers use to schedule in their volunteer sessions. So you're probably all quite familiar with that. But we'll get started and get straight into it. So Bennett, do you want to start and kind of let everyone know a little bit about you and where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. Thanks very much for having me along. Awesome to be part of the session and reminisce a bit about the days back at Deakin and where I'm at today. So I'll sort of talk through it, I guess, in the other sections and the other questions that we're going through. But yeah, fundamentally, I graduated from Deakin in 2008. I did the undergrad Commerce Sport Management degree. And first 2 years of that, I lived on campus out at Deakin, Burwood. Third year, I lived in Richmond. The year after that, I went traveling overseas for 14 months and then came back looking for work. So fast forward probably 12 years, to be honest. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Roster. Is for those who have volunteered within Indusa, that's a software that you're using to apply for shifts and work on campus in volunteer roles. But the journey to get there, it's sort of been over 11 years now. So I'm not sure if you want me to get into the detail too much, Hannah, but I can give it in a nutshell of where I got to today and how that began. But it really started off the back of some of the challenges of finding work in the industry and full-time work, and actually realizing with my cousin, who was 2 years below me and did the same course at Deakin, that it was really hard to get a job in sport and events out of university. And whilst thousands of students are studying the courses, there's not thousands of jobs out there. And it is really difficult to find those opportunities at times. So I went for 4 or 5 job interviews. I even traveled from Colombia to San Diego 1 year for a job interview that I missed out on. And it was all to do with not having enough experience and not being able to relate my experience to the job I was applying for. So it got me thinking, along with Shannon, who I started EWG, Event Workforce Group, with how do we create a business and a company that can actually help students while they're studying gain work experience, so that when you graduate, you've got 4, 5, 6 different opportunities you can talk about in your interview, and you feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident about the scenarios that you're applying for. So that led us down the path of setting up a placement agency, and that company, we gave the motto "Placement with a Purpose." It was all about helping university students find casual work out there in the sport and events field. And as we grew that company, there was more and more opportunity and more requirement to improve our scheduling and our staffing processes. And that then led us to actually setting up and creating our own software for scheduling workforce. And in 2015, we launched that as its own company called Rostify. And since then, that company has now grown into about 14 countries. A couple of our biggest clients are the Super Bowl. So yesterday, that was the 5th Super Bowl that have used Rostify, which is cool. So Doosa uses the same software as the Super Bowl. And they use it for 10,000 volunteers to be scheduled across a week of their event. So we do the Commonwealth Games, we do Melbourne Marathon, and obviously universities use it for scheduling as well. So I'm the CEO of that company. We've got an office in America, Dubai, and in the UK. And yeah, there's obviously a lot that I've learned along the journey and can talk about today, but in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at. And the relevance, I guess, for this session is what's the experience like for starting your own business, what I learnt during uni that could have helped in that scenario, or going into job interviews. And I can talk a bit about that as we go through. So hopefully I'll sum that up without going too detailed.
No, that was great. Thanks, Bennett. Sounds like it was a big day for you guys with the Super Bowl yesterday then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't as big as the previous years, but they still put it on, which was pretty crazy. So good to see it.
Brady got his 7th ring. Rachel, do you want to jump in and let us know where you started, I guess?
Okay, so my name is Rachel. I respond to both, but I currently work at Collingwood Football Club and I'm an account manager in partnership. So I work across all of our teams. So that's inclusive of AFL Women's, our netball program, our secondary teams like VFL, VFLW, our wheelchair team as well. So I just work with our clients, our sponsors, partners that partner with the club. And we just work to fulfill those benefits and requirements that they're looking for when they partner with Collingwood. And I guess, yeah, I kind of got into it. I studied at Deakin. I did 5 long years at Deakin, which was great. I did get a little bit lost on my way with what I wanted to do. I spent 3 years in an undergrad degree in management, majoring in marketing and human resource development. And I really thought I was going to be doing something in HR and knew I loved working with people, but I got to my 3rd year and I was like, oh no, I don't like it anymore. So I had a bit of a turn during that 3rd year and I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. Do I go become a teacher? Do I do my honours? I was just very torn. At my end of my 3rd year, I ended up applying for like 7 courses to go in for my 4th year. Just didn't know what I wanted to do. But I ended up getting into my Masters of Business, majoring in sport management or sport administration. And I spent 2 years doing full-time doing that postgrad degree. I ended up volunteering throughout my time during work at other organisations because I just was trying to find what areas. I feel like sport's such a big thing and you just sometimes don't understand what departments you want to sit in or how organisations do work. So I started volunteering at places like Football Federation Victoria, the Melbourne Rebels Super Rugby team, and just kind of found my feet in Super Rugby. And yeah, just kind of worked my way through that and it ended up finally getting my way into the AFL space and world, and have landed in an area that I'm really happy with. Throughout my time at uni, I was part of, I don't know what it's called anymore, but it was defunct at the time. So it was Football Netball Association, that one. I think it's just netball now. So I was involved in that from 2011 to 2014 when I left. I thought that was one of the best things I ever did and decided to do because it really just kind of gave me, it kind of helped me doing stuff now in my work, like how to organise and how to work with people. A lot of my role is organising and managing expectations and people and requests, and we're constantly on the go. So I found that doing that work in, it was really nice to have that kind of grounding under my feet and just being able to work with people. And yeah, I think that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm not as fancy as Bennett, but that's just me. I'm not a CEO, but that's okay.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Rachel. And I guess probably makes sense going from netball club into a huge sports club in the end.
Yes, no, definitely good crossover.
Yeah. And Kieran, do you want to let everyone know, I guess, how you've gotten to where you are at WorkSafe and what came before it?
All right, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, and well done, Rachel. I couldn't top the Super Bowl either, so I was glad I went to it. But afternoon, everyone. So I'm Kieran. Firstly, I just want to say a big thanks to Hannah and Mel. So I reckon these are really great initiatives that I probably didn't take advantage of back in my time at uni. So if I can give you some insight and well done to everyone kind of taking it up today. But as Hannah mentioned, I'm currently at WorkSafe Victoria. So yeah, not as fancy as a football club or owning my own kind of business, but I've worked into the government space. In the past couple of years, I've had a couple of different positions here at WorkSafe, which is a really great organisation. Originally, I was in the mental health team. I've now moved across as a recovery performance officer. So a bit of a kind of fancy title, but how I see it is it's in a project management space and working on a pilot program on how I can support injured workers. So doing some really good work there. When I was at university, so what feels like a very long time ago, but I did study a Bachelor of Health Science and I majored in exercise science and that health promotion. So coming out of high school, I knew I liked sports and health and looking after, myself and taking a keen interest. So I did the health science approach, but still didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself at the time. So I kind of went along with that. Probably didn't take advantage of attending Deakin at the Burwood as much as I should have. So like Bennett mentioned, I think he lived on campus, and I knew they always had a great time and fully immersed themselves in the Deakin experience. But I regret not kind of taking up those opportunities, and it's only hindsight now where I wish I could, go back to my time at uni and really enjoy those clubs that Rachel's in. I went to a couple of parties, but I wouldn't really call that the full experience. But I felt like I was a little bit naive at the time. I was probably a little bit burnt out coming from high school. I was also living in Melbourne, so it wasn't too much of an ask to get to university, but definitely didn't take advantage of it. But since finishing at Deakin, I've since done another diploma in project management, which has probably been, what separated me from the pack a little bit. And then since being at WorkSafe, I've done a Cert 4 in work health and safety. So just really transferable skill set. Hannah, do we want to get into like where I got in today, or was that probably the next question?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead with it, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So one of the questions we had today is like how you got to where you are today, and it's probably one of my favorite questions that I ask people that I constantly want to learn from. And I think it's like a really fascinating and eye-opening experience to have these conversations with people. So where they started at uni, like where you guys are probably at the moment, to what people are doing now in 5 and 10 years time. So just for a quick example, one of my mates I did exercise science with is now the head of a marketing company at a large organisation. So yeah, one of the big things is not to limit your opportunities or possibilities coming out of university, and that's why you have these conversations and these great initiatives. But for me personally, I've had a bit of an interesting one. Once I finished my course, I quickly came to the realisation that having a degree wasn't going to get me a job. Looking at my experience at the time, there's very little, wasn't relevant to my job market. And I reckon I applied for at least 20 or 30 entry positions and spent hours doing KPIs and getting, the standard email back from, the workplaces, thanks for your interest, but, bad luck. So this is where I came to the realisation I needed to reach out to my mentor who I had at the time at uni, and he was in health promotion. So he gave me that pretty blunt advice that you haven't got experience. And that's where he reached out with his own networks, and I was able to land like a one-day volunteering role at Headspace, which was youth mental health. And this is all new to me. I'd never really spoken about mental health or looked into it, but that's how it kind of started, from a networking and from a mentor. So from here, I did some voluntary work at Headspace, and I was working part-time at Safeway at Woolworths, stacking shelves. To that eventually leading, 2 or 3 days, they had a position as an admin reception. So I took that and then still working at Safeway. But I reckon you just capitalise on those opportunities, because that's where I built those soft skills and being able to speak to people from all walks of life and interacting with all those different roles. This then moved into the community and awareness space, so kind of promoting good mental health. And, I was working part-time admin and 2 days in community awareness. I then had the opportunity to develop a mental health program for local football clubs, so something that I was familiar with. So I was able to go out to local footy clubs, do mental health presentations, get the coaches and leaders to do mental health awareness training, and then do awareness raising events. And from here, a position at the Western Bulldogs Footy Club came up, so helping them run their men's health program. So looking at physical health, nutrition, and exercise science, so what I did at uni. I spent 2.5 years there, and I've learned a lot in that short time, and some great people, including Hannah, who's at the MC today. So she definitely showed me the ropes in regards to marketing and event management. Then I was saying earlier, I was fortunate to be there when the Dogs won their grand final for the first time in 60 odd years. So it was a really good experience. To now where I'm in the government space. So working at WorkSafe, I've worked in mental health programs, I've worked in high risk work, and now in the injured worker space. So probably the big thing from that is like you build up that transferable skill set. It doesn't limit you on where you have to work as a cohort. You can bring your skills to any number of kind of positions out there. So I think that's probably what I've learned the most in my career, is to kind of build those skills, and you can take it wherever you want to.
Yeah, no, and I guess that's great, Kieran. Thank you. I'd almost echo your words and say, basically take whatever opportunity you can get straight out of uni. I know my first full-time job was at the Bulldogs, but it came from working there as a casual staff member a day or two a week for 6 months. And eventually someone saw something in me and gave me a leg up and an opportunity. But you do have to put in the hard yards. And if you can do an internship or do a day a week here or there whilst you're studying, it can be the way into the industry. I guess if we head over to Bennett now, I guess a bit more about how you got to where you are and the pathway out of university to end up as the CEO of a company?
Yeah, look, I describe it as bit of misfortune, but good timing, to be honest. The the journey to starting Event Workforce Group is no different to the journey that most students go through from university. It's applying for jobs, thinking you're the right person for the job, and ultimately finding out that you didn't have the relevant experience or the relevant skills for it itself. The main difference is that we kind of took the leap to start our own business off the back of it, instead of obviously ultimately finding a full-time job in the industry as well. So my university days, I was on campus at Deakin there, which was a lot of fun, and met a heap of different people, which was great. They weren't just schoolmates, so actually people from the country, people in my course, everything like that. So I think on campus, you want to try and get involved as much as you can where possible, because often those people you meet are going to be in your network later in your career as well. So they're going to help you find jobs, or might actually employ you if you can. So always remember who your network is in that respect. But I would say that I probably wasn't that good at work experience during my course. I did a 6-month internship at a company called Active Network because I was interested in the role the internet plays. This sounds pretty trivial actually, but it might have been probably 15 years ago. So I was interested in technology and sport and where that was heading. So I sort of, instead of working at a footy club or other opportunities that perhaps most students are looking to, I thought, okay, maybe there's a technology play here that I could work towards. So I did that 6-month internship. It was fine. I did basic data entry, all the other key work that you might be doing, market research, etc. And thought, great, that'll be perfect. That's my last year of study, 6-month internship. All right, I'll put that on the resume, start applying for jobs, and it'll all be sweet. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I got to about, I went traveling after university as well. I actually worked in the Epworth Hospital as an orderly during my course. So there's not much correlation to sport management in that, apart from dealing with people and high pressure scenarios and relating it that back. So I had my one internship. I was obviously the head of the sports club on campus. So that was related to sport and what I could do on campus itself and everything else, played uni games. And yeah, I obviously traveled 2 months before I came back to Australia. I was like, okay, I need to think about a full-time job here. I'm going to struggle trying to then come back in and find a full-time work. Didn't have any dollars to my name, so to speak. This is 4 months into 5 months in South America. So had the time of my life, but then things were getting a bit serious. I was like, okay, I better start looking at a job after this. And my intern boss, he called me and said, Bennett, if you can get to San Diego for a job interview, you might be able to pull off a full-time sales role when you come back to Australia. So unfortunately, there was a couple of failed flights. The flights were delayed. I had to push the interview back a day. I flew from Colombia to San Diego, and my biggest hope was that the person employing me would have a bit of compassion that the effort I went to get to this interview would be enough to land me the job, because I knew I was probably a bit underqualified for it. This person was obviously, she's very unprofessional in the way she handled things. She basically took a phone call during the interview. She let someone else in the room during the interview and gave me about 20 minutes of her time. And I'd traveled 4 days for this interview. So I was pretty dejected and upset about that whole experience. And at the end of the day, I think she saw that I genuinely did not have enough experience for the role. And as good as it might have come across in my passion and willingness for the job, I just probably didn't stack up in terms of the experience I needed for it. So came back to Australia, applied for 4 or 5 jobs, and Shannon and I then started talking about, all right, what can we do to start a business that would help open the doors for students? And he was working at the Melbourne Marathon. He would go back to Deakin Res, recruit 15 to 20 of his mates. So I'd then go in at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning, work and set up the event, and then pack it down. And then it was like, okay, there's a way here for us to understand that the sport and event market doesn't necessarily have a labour hire company that's got motivated students looking for experience and reliable staff. So it was then 2 years of working In another random job I worked at a primary school in Geelong, and then after school would finish at 3:30 till 9 p.m. at night, I'd work on Event Workforce Group and do whatever I could to keep building up that business, and then ultimately got it to a point in 2013 where we'd go full time. So the main lessons that I take out of that is there's a lot about the interview process and being prepared for interviews and how you can go about that. And then there's also the element of just the one internship is not enough. You've got to do more than that to prove that you're obviously eager and you've got the skills that can help you get your job in the industry. And then I think there's also a play at starting a business these days is probably not as hard as it used to be. And coming out of university is probably the best time to consider doing something like that, because you have a lot of time ahead of you and you've got a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm if you find something you're passionate about. And you can always find jobs on the side to keep the wheels ticking over if you're passionate about it and you think there's a future in what you're doing. So I think people should always keep an open mind into, just because you might be studying a business degree doesn't mean you have to go and work at a bank or in a finance course or a finance institute. You can actually open your eyes a bit to what else is out there. So yeah, mine was that. There's other lessons about who you work with, who you surround yourself with. Without Shannon, I don't think the business would be anywhere near as successful. And so there's a lot about using your network to build up the skills and play your role within the team itself. So that would be a couple of the key ones that I would have learned along the journey. And we can go through a bit more as we grow, but that's essentially how I got to where we are at the moment, Hannah, and the last 5 years of this software company and putting that in play has then grown internationally and been able to scale from country to country. So it's a whole lot of different skills that I've learned along the way. But nothing I've learned, to be honest, in running my business did I read in a book. A lot of it's come through coffees with people who've already done it, or working with people who I've actually learnt on the job and just kept learning and putting myself in situations that I'm really scared about all the time, and being able to talk the talk and be able to get through those situations, even if you're not completely confident in yourself, but at least knowing you've done the preparation to get there so you can actually talk about it. And most people in the world are reasonable if they know you've put the effort in and you know what you're talking about.
No, that's a great one. And I think you do learn a lot from people when you're in jobs and kind of bouncing around. But I think it was one that it actually might have been Kieran in the office when I worked with him years ago, when he'd said to his boss, or someone had said to their boss, "Oh, should we do a SWOT analysis on this?" And the boss said, "Oh, what's a SWOT analysis?" And it was at that point I was like, oh, okay, like I've had SWOT analyses drilled into me at university. They may not be what gets used in the workforce instead. But I guess, like, for everyone that's listening, you'll probably work out that a lot of people, like, it's not a straight career trajectory when you finish uni. It's not that, you go into a coordinator position and then you just slowly work your way up the ranks. Often you kind of jumping ship or jumping to a new role, learning some things there. And they're all the building blocks that then come together that then enable you to get those management roles or have the experience to move around organisations. But yeah, Rachel, if you want to kind of give everyone a bit of an idea of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, definitely. It's a bit of I was actually just reflecting on what you said, Bennett. I actually had a bit of struggle, guess going into the work and sport it's a lot about who you know. And that's what I really struggled with, especially when I was trying to get out of Super Rugby. And I was trying to get into AFL, and it took me about 8 to 10 months to land the role I'm in, or land at Collingwood. I went for 3 roles at one club and I got second every time. I went for multiple other roles multiple other jobs I didn't even hear back from. And I just think that it does wear you down. And I did get to that point where I was completely worn down. And then I, by fluke, applied for a role that was well above what I thought I was capable of, but just got to the point where I'm just going to do it, at least get my name out there. And it was, again, a connection that I just started forming with the person that was interviewing me. But also through my time volunteering, I had actually was really fortunate in my role at the Melbourne Rebels that I got to go through every department. I didn't just have to work through, I wasn't just in the membership team, I was in the marketing, I was in merchandise. I learned about everything from an admin point of view, when that's, I guess, where we are in sport. But that actually really put me in good stead. It's good stead ahead of others that I had that experience in different areas as well, and just had an understanding of the business. I felt that whilst my uni degree was awesome and it gave me a great standing point, it actually volunteering and interning for a long period of time and understanding the work ethic and what you have to put in whilst working was something completely I'm so grateful for the time that I had. But yeah, I guess I kind of mentioned before, I did my master's in business sport admin in 2013. I was still kind of fluffing around, didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't even apply at the end of my undergrad for entry positions. I just really was quite lost. And I was like, okay, I need to figure out where I want to go. And finally started finding my feet through people that I went to high school with that were already in the industry or had known connections. And again, it's that connection, how you start networking. I actually think I'm a terrible networker. I find it really hard to talk to people and want to give myself and give information about me away. But that's, I guess, one thing I am learning even now is just how to talk to people and approaching people, not so in a formal manner throughout my current career. But yeah, so then I started at the end of 2013, I got a 3-week internship with the Rebels, and at the end of that, they floated a comment being like, oh, we'll see if I've got anything next year. And I hounded and hounded and hounded and was like, give me something. Like, I don't care if it's 1 day, I don't care if it's 2 days, like, I just want something. And persistence, I guess, kind of paid off. And I then spent 10 months there. They actually then didn't offer me a full-time role for about a month. And so, but then finally I got something full-time with them, and that's where I guess started my, did a full season with them. Really, if you're interested in sport, it's actually quite, comparatively to AFL, it's quite, it's very different. It's a lot of hard work and you're a lot more hands-on, but I feel like that, again, has given me so much grounding for what I do now. But yeah, then again, I started going, what's my next step? What do I want to do? I can't keep, I want to progress and I want to go up. So I then, I did a few additional courses. I did I think it was my Cert 3 in business, just to get a few helpful tips in Excel, which I'm still learning, in Word and all those fancy other documents. But then finally, yeah, like I said, took me a while to get into AFL. But I've really started to find my feet now. But then again, starting to look at my next challenge about what I want to do. And if it's more study, if it's, I do want to go into a management role. So it's how do I find ways to become, push myself and challenge myself now. I think the key takeaway is don't stop learning. I think I kind of stopped once I was like, I got a job, I'm done. Like, I'm in, I got my paycheck every month, it's fine. But I think that's where I kind of fell a little bit behind once I landed a role. I was like, no, I don't need to do anything more. But now I'm like, okay, well, how can I make myself a better person in the workplace? How can I find leadership roles? And I've done a few things. The AFL has a few good programs that they extend to clubs that you get to do management and leadership opportunities. So, which has been really good. And again, they're all volunteering my time. And I think that's the best thing, is just keep investing in yourself. I think that's where people kind of forget and they just get stuck in their 9 to 5 or whatever hours you're working, and just want to get the job done. But that's my biggest, is make sure you look after you and do something that you're really passionate about. Like Bennett said, I'm actually then starting to move on into the fitness world. Like, I'm doing Pilates and Pilates teaching. So starting to look at, is it an opportunity to do my own business? Is that something I put onto the side as well? But yeah, that's kind of me, if that was okay.
No, that's great. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, and it is interesting. Like, I feel like when you're applying for jobs, you will just get knocked back over and over again. And the rejection does take its toll after a while, and you kind of start to think, oh, is there something wrong with me? But really, it's just that, you know, the job market is really competitive, and it really depends what your resume says and then how well you interview. But it sounds like you've landed on your feet pretty well at Collingwood.
Yes, still swimming, just above water.
Still swimming, yeah, just treading water. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we'll jump back to Kieran. I guess the kind of final question I wanted to ask everyone was, what do you wish in your university, and what would have helped you in your career? I guess for me, I was involved with a number of clubs and kind of leadership opportunities, but I know, Kieran, you'd mentioned you kind of didn't really get involved in those things and probably wish you had of a bit. And how do you think they might have actually helped you when you started in the workforce?
Yeah, so I had to think about this, and there's a lot I wish I knew at uni, but that's hindsight, and it's kind of done. So if I can impart maybe 3 main points that I reflect back on, and the first one is take advantage of your time at uni. So not only immerse yourself in the Deakin experience and what it has to offer, but being a university student, you do have a bit of flexibility in your time. So this is where you're going to kind of separate yourself. So when I was at the Western Bulldogs, one of the roles I did was placements for students. So I would interview and read dozens and dozens of students' CVs and then interview them. So everyone had their own, everyone was kind of doing the same degree or something similar, and they were all doing a mandatory placement. But what I would see is that what is going to separate you once you finish your degree from those other hundreds of people with the same degree as you. And it's going to be things like the volunteering opportunities and those additional studies that Bennett and Rachel has kind of already said. And what also has been I look back on it is you get some really good holiday time at Deakin. So if you can take advantage of that in regards to volunteering, but also traveling. And I found, by traveling, you learn a lot about yourself. You have those conversations, and it puts you in those positions where you might not be comfortable. You learn a lot about you and how to build those soft skills, which are then transferable to your other workplaces and the workplace. Number 2 is mentors is a big one. So I'm fortunate that I did do this. But it's one thing I always recommend to kind of students and young people, or anyone really, is to find people that can support you. So, have that real life insight. They actually work in the job field. It can tell you how it is. And in my case, it turned into a volunteering opportunity, which then kind of kickstarted my career just from, a conversation. So if you can have a chat to your teachers at uni or your networks, I highly recommend it. If you haven't got a LinkedIn profile, you can kind of build that up and reach out to people like your Bennett who you can, have a coffee with and really find out what do I do in this situation, or how can I go about it? And that's where you start building those skills and those networks, at your time at uni. And then probably the last one as well, and it's again really familiar with what Bennett was saying, and probably Rachel as well, is that it's by putting yourself out there. So continue to push yourself, continue to develop and try new things. And by putting yourself in those situations where you don't feel comfortable, that's where you're learning the most about you, and you find out what you do like in regards to work and what you don't like. For example, like I don't necessarily really like public speaking, but as soon as an opportunity comes up, I try and put my hand up because I know I need to get better at it. So yeah, those are the 3. There's a lot more, but yeah, definitely kind of reach out and find those mentors if you can.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Kieran. I think mentors are a good one that you can even just bounce ideas off, or kind of if you've got a resume and you want someone to check it out, or give you a bit of an idea about what questions might actually get asked in an interview. I think people really underestimate how important it is to nail those questions in an interview when you are going for a job. But yeah, Bennett, do you have, I guess, a few things as well to pass on, some words of advice?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the travel was a big one to broaden your horizons and bring experience and, I guess, different situations to your professional development as well. I don't think the development has to always be the book smarts and the skills on the job itself. It can always be enough experiences to give yourself the confidence to sell yourself. Obviously, an interview is about selling yourself and having the confidence that you're a right person for the job. And sometimes employers are looking for people that they can know that if they bring them into the team, they'll fit in quickly and they'll be able to get on with their work and sort of pick things up as they go, even though it might be new to them. So I guess illustrating to someone when you're in a job interview that you do have the confidence and you believe in yourself. That sort of belief comes from putting yourself in scenarios that might not be in your comfort zone and getting out there. So I think that development is as experience important as the skills itself. I think you can really break it down into that first job that you get into is going to open up a lot of opportunities for you. So try and do your best to picture when you graduate, what are the jobs that you might be looking to apply for? So even now you should look on Seek and just look at the jobs in your sector or in the industries that you're interested in, actually understand what the jobs look like, because you could work your way backwards off position descriptions and actually understand the skills that they're looking for. Because you might come out of your course with this whole 3, 4, 5 year degree of all these things you've studied, but the position description you're applying for might have 3 or 4 dot points. So actually try and build up a bit of a catalogue of the jobs that are in the industry, because you know when you start your first job, you will find a great employer or a network or a colleagues that can help take you on the journey from there. So I think instead of thinking, oh, I've got to figure out 40 years of my career, just focus on the first 12 or 24 months of when you graduate, and then work yourself backwards from that. I think that's really key. The other ones that I would probably say that I learned a lot of, or perhaps that I could, last question was what I wish I knew more of, was like the leadership skills and the management of people. I think that's a really big one. Obviously you can learn that in the workplace, but how you relate to others and how you can work with them is really key. So I wouldn't dismiss any sort of management subjects and different things that you can learn around people management, because that's a bigger and more important area than any at the moment. Kieran's experience in mental health in the workplace and managing people is becoming really, really important. So any people management courses or ways that you can put yourself in a situation to manage people will be very valuable in the future. And I think it's just that whole on-campus experience for me was probably the big one, is meeting the right people on campus, staying in touch with them, keeping in the loop with your networks, and comfort zone where you can, to summarize that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Bennett. And I think, like, to further on from that, if you're in a course that, you know, might be accounting and doesn't have those kind of management subjects that you're able to take, have a look around for them. There's great things like LinkedIn Learning have plenty of kind of seminars and webinars that you can attend and training you can do for free. There's groups like General Assembly. I know they do really good kind of, if you're looking into marketing or project marketing or more the IT and digital space, they've got some great paid courses, but they also generally do free Fridays where they'll do like a 2-hour intro. And I know I did a lot of them during lockdown, and they kept me quite entertained, and I took plenty out of them. So if you are looking for those training opportunities, you don't just have to look within the university space either. There is plenty of places you can go. So yeah, I guess, Rachel, if you want to kind of finish us up with your words of wisdom.
Yeah, I obviously echo the other guys, but just, I know it's probably hard in a COVID environment, but I really wish I had studied overseas. I feel like I personally didn't know enough about it when I was at uni, and I probably didn't make much of an effort to know anything about it. I kept to myself and in my bubble in my first year. But in saying that, though, I'm so grateful that I got pushed into doing social netball in my first year, and then making some really solid friends and getting into the club environment, and then even to uni games. I ended up going to 8 uni games. My liver didn't thank me for it, but it was a really good experience, and I made lifelong friends. Like, I'm still really good mates with some of the people that I went through then. But yeah, I really recommend just getting on a campus. Like, I remember the first netball team I got put in, I became best friends throughout my whole uni degree. Even now, we're still really close. And I know that's really hard to just put yourself out there, and it might not be sport. It could be another, I mean, I stayed in sport, but obviously getting yourself into groups and just, even if you meet one person, you never know how, like, that person could be your lifelong friend or someone that has a support for you throughout uni. I know I definitely had that, especially in my degree and whatnot. But probably I liked Kieran when he said about mentors. I think I that's probably another advice I really would recommend, is getting someone that you can trust, or identifying someone that you have the same values with, or someone that you would love to guide you through, especially tough decisions with work. I know when I had a point when I was working in my first role, I actually got offered another role at another club, and I was tossing up what to do, and I had no one to bounce ideas off from. I was young, I just didn't know what to do with it. And I feel like if I had just had learnt, or had reached out to someone earlier, or just made myself, like, had found someone earlier to bounce those things off with, it would have made it a lot easier process on my mind. But yeah, definitely finding someone that you can bounce ideas with. And probably just understanding myself. Like I knew that I loved sport at uni, and I knew that that was what I like to do. But yeah, understanding myself and what I enjoyed doing. I know that I didn't actually get into my first uni course. I didn't get the ATAR or Enter, whatever it was back 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't get into that my first course, but then I actually ended up getting into something so much better and so much that better suited me. And then I found lecturers and people within that really were supportive. And but yeah, so I guess that's my kind of advice, I guess.
No, that's great. Thanks, guys. I guess it's pretty obvious, like obviously do your work at uni, but try and network, make friends, make the most of it, get involved with as many things as possible. And it really will help when you kind of get into the workforce in the end. I guess, does anyone have any questions for now at all? I've just put a thing in the chat box, but yeah, Kat, if you want to ask a question.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I was just typing the question. I figured it'd be easier if I actually...
Yeah, just ask, yeah.
So this question is for Bennett. Would you consider expanding Rosterify to potentially assisting students or people in finding volunteer positions for events at museums? Because I've studied a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology and Children's Literature, and I sort of want to get into working in museums, and unfortunately it's certainly for that industry, because of how small it is in Australia, it's a who you know, not what you know, unfortunately. Would you consider potentially expanding into that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually worked with a couple of museums, not in Australia, but outside of Australia, where they use the software for the volunteer management. What our software doesn't do at the moment is connect people with the opportunities. It's more of a tool that the museum would use.
Yeah.
But definitely learned some strategies around how people can get into the industry as well and look at that. I'm not sure if there's associations or like a body that looks after all the museums in Australia that you might be able to join, or that has peel off network clubs for you in that element. I'm not particularly sure on that, but it is something that we would definitely consider, and can definitely do a bit of digging for you on how to go about it. What have you done so far to try and get experience?
I volunteered for 8 years at the National War Museum in Geelong. So I started as a tour guide, and then I started slowly working into the administration side of things. In fact, I helped to put together a potential template for tours that the current education officers can actually use and adapt and change for galleries 1 and 2. I've got a background in early childhood as a diploma teacher, so I was able to use my skills to create a separate document especially with reading the frameworks. They are really hard to read and adjust to. I was able to actually adapt that and cater it specifically to how it would relate to each individual area of the tour. And that was something that I did as part of a assignment. And then I sort of was like, well, do you want me to do this as well? Because I saw that the Melbourne Museum has on their website, you can actually, as a teacher, you can go on and you can see exactly how a specific exhibition would link to what you're teaching. Mm-hmm. And especially for parents homeschooling, like that's really beneficial. So that's sort of my experience. Was actually offered a job, and I was meant to start the day that COVID closed everything down. I was like, oh, thank you. Many tradie words were spoken, as obviously they were. So it was sort of finishing off that at home, and then it was sort of a waiting game, and then moved up to Brisbane. So I had to resign, unfortunately, but yeah.
Yeah, our software doesn't do that directly connecting you to the museums, unfortunately, but sounds like you've done everything possible. So it couldn't be too far around the corner before things open up for you, hopefully.
Yeah, sounds like you were just about there, and then
yeah.
COVID happened like it did, unfortunately. So I think, like a lot of us had said, just keep applying. Like, you will just get knocked down over and over again. And, you know, if you're Bennett, start your own company instead.
Or you could formalize the work you're doing. Obviously, it sounds like you've done a lot of work in a volunteer capacity, which is really important to them. So perhaps you could maybe think about what step you could take it to, and maybe you're a consultant to a museum and say, here's my proposal, here's consulting work I can do because I've got all this expertise. So you can put a value on your time a little bit, and maybe that would then put you in front of different people to speak to, because they're like, oh, wow, this is actually really valuable. So maybe back yourself in and put a bit more value on your time and the expertise you have, because you would know stuff that a lot of people in 1 or 2 years in these museums would not know. So maybe have a think about how you can professionalize your knowledge a bit more.
Great, thank you. It was suggested because I am on JobSeeker now through Centrelink. So I had a meeting with my provider, and she suggested that I take a look at studying as a tutor. So because I've done readings at, like, some of the readings that we've had to do, like Heidegger, Jung, a lot of quite heavy readings, and especially at Deakin, we only got 1 hour to go through this entire, some of them were 30, 40 pages long. So, and students need a lot more than just that. So it was suggested that I take a look at doing that as well, as sort of a legging. So
yeah,
That'd be a good idea as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Did anyone else have any questions at all?
Yes, I do have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might sound a little silly, but then I've attended a number of networking sessions of this kind, and thank you all for the insightful thoughts. But there has been a lot of importance given to mentoring, right? And as an international student, I am really in need of some kind of mentoring, and I've tried shooting off messages to countless people on LinkedIn, but to no avail. So I was wondering if there's something that I was doing wrong. Is there a certain way you approach to ask someone to be your mentor? Because that's what I seem to have a little bit of a difficulty with.
Yeah, so is there advice you guys would give Phil or Kieran?
Yeah.
Mentor?
I'll just say, oh, okay, sorry. I'll just say, firstly, well done for doing it, because, like, putting yourself out there, you're already, one step ahead of a lot of people. Maybe another suggestion is to, if you have any current networks at university that they can recommend, so they personally recommend and have a relationship with already, rather than that third party, non-existing relationship, because then it puts a bit more accountability on the potential mentor, or if you want to reach out. And it could be the way you're approaching it. So, is it asking for a coffee rather than, you probably try and start small, as in, like, don't be my mentor, because it can be a big commitment. But if you go, look, I'm really interested in what you've done. You've got some really great experience. Can I take you out for a coffee? Like, that's my big thing, is take them out for a coffee, buy them the coffee, meet them at their workplace or around the corner. So maybe it's your approach, but it sounds like you're on the right track anyway. But those are the two things I might try.
Yeah, I was just either going to just say as well, I went, would look to someone like you. I know it's always nice to have someone like you might see on LinkedIn and be like, oh, they're awesome, I want them to be my mentor. But it could also be kind of bringing it back to someone that's a bit closer, like closer to home. Like, I know, like, I went probably too close, and I was like, my manager can be my mentor. And he's like, no, pick someone that you don't, like, you're close with and that you know. And so now it's an ex-colleague of mine who is a little bit older and has been in the workforce a bit more, but it's just someone that I do still know. In saying that, though, I do have friends that have reached out to people and they have been successful in finding someone that they didn't know. But yeah, if it's, I would recommend going to someone that you, like what Kieran said, being closer to your contact and not extending yourself too far in that reach. Yeah, it just might, I definitely keep going, because I praise and give you kudos for reaching out, because that's something that I would struggle to do and put myself out there. But yeah, I definitely maybe consider if there's someone closer, or if it's a lecturer that might be able to help you instead as well.
Yeah. Bennett, did you have anything to add at all to that?
No, I think that people are willing, and a lot of people are eager to help other people as well when it comes to mentoring. So it may just not be the right time for them. So maybe if you can preface it with saying, obviously you're a busy person in what you're doing day to day, is there a chance in the next month or 2 months for us to have a coffee, or let them sort of dictate their schedule and come instead of coming across like, oh, I need to have a coffee or a chat with you tomorrow. So maybe just sort of preface it with more, okay, I understand you're busy, but when can we work together on a time? And I think putting yourself in those situations where you can meet as many people face to face as well. And it's not that easy these days, that's for sure. But meeting people face to face can obviously be a lot easier than the LinkedIn messaging as well. So the more you do of that, the more you build up your confidence, and utilizing who you already know to help is the key one that the guys mentioned.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hopefully that helps a bit, Varshna.
Thank you.
No worries. And then we've got one more question here on any advice to how to get into the tennis world. Majoring in exercise physiology, but my passion would be to work with the athletes that play tennis. So yeah, do you guys have any advice on, I guess, Rachel, maybe?
Probably in this one, because I just know from experience, like I think a lot of, I'm not sure about tennis, but I know in AFL that we partner with universities as well. So that also is how we get a lot of our students come through and work in that sports system. Getting into the, I definitely would actually, I don't know, I mean, don't know what you've tried now, but even again, I'm starting small. It could be worth, if you're still studying now, to start looking at your local tennis competitions or local tennis clubs and maybe approaching them and just working your way through that. I feel like that might be, instead of just trying to get to into the tennis or into Tennis Australia or something like that, I personally think that might be worth looking at the local tennis competitions and just maybe even finding players through that and building a relationship through that way. And that might be beneficial, and build that slowly, gradual way up. It might even be getting onto forums as well, or getting onto, just trying to think, I'm more in the admin side of stuff. So coming into that exercise physiology stuff is a bit new to me, but yeah, I definitely would either just look at maybe even reaching out to that lower level before hitting up straight to the big time, because I feel like that's where you'll do all the groundwork and then progress your way up. But
yeah, and I guess for tennis in particular, Tennis Vic and Tennis Oz are linked quite closely. So yeah, if you're going more, like Rachel said, the grassroots level, there are a lot of people that start at the grassroots level, and then yeah, you make your network, you make your contacts and build your way up. But even echoing what someone mentioned before is jump on Seek and see what jobs, you know, pop up here and there, whether it's casual roles, to get a bit more of an idea about what your pathway might be as well. Kieran, were you going to jump in and say something too?
Yeah, like Deacon's amazing for, like, it's renowned for exercise science. So maybe look internally first with the exercise science university teachers, or if they have any links or volunteering. But then the other one as well is that, yes, passion, tennis is your passion, but like probably Rachel is with footy, you can kind of defer. Like the hard part's getting into the sporting industry, but it's actually really a close circle, because you'll build networks where, you know, you'll be speaking to potentially Tennis Australia if you're at Collingwood or something like that. So don't always think that your number one job is going to be your first one out of uni. Like I didn't see myself working at Headspace because I didn't know anything about mental health, or working at the reception desk, but I loved footy and eventually got into the Western Bulldogs, and now I'm in another place. So just don't try and limit yourself. I don't want to kind of dishearten you, but there is other ways to get there.
And then thanks for that, Kieran. And I think Bennett's also just put in a comment there saying Spark Event Group do a lot of placings. Yeah.
Yep. So that Spark Event Group is the rebranded company from Event Workforce Group, which we started originally, and they have a contract with the Australian Open where they've got about 450 staff every day at the Australian Open. So if you wanted to email me directly, I'm not sure where the question came from, but I can happily see if there's any roles at the Australian Open in the next couple of weeks, and see if there's anything to connect you with there as well.
Oh yes, that would be great. It was from me,